Hello, class. My name is Annie Ramos, and alongside my partner Neela Mohan, we will be talking about factory farming. I want to start off by reading a quote by Mohandas Gandhi. The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. I hold that the more helpless a creature, the more entitled it is to protection by man from the cruelty of man. We'll be defining what a factory farm is, the history behind it, the conditions of hog, dairy, and chicken farms, the environmental consequences and human health risks, and the stakeholders in the topic. So, what is factory farming? As defined by the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a factory farm is a large industrialized farm on which large numbers of livestock are raised indoors in conditions intended to maximize production at a minimal cost. However, there is another definition that I would like for us to stick with, and this is the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA's definition, which defines a factory farm as a large industrial operation that raises large numbers of animals for food with a primary focus on profit and efficiency at the expense of animal welfare. So, how did factory farms first emerge? We have to keep in mind that the United States was founded as an agrarian society. Prior to the emergence of factory farms, farms were generally small to medium sized, and animals roamed freely about the farmer's land. It was until the late 1800s that farmers began fencing their animals. In the late 1920s, poultry became the first large scale animal to be farmed. For nearly 50 years, chickens were the only factory farmed animals, who were brought inside in large numbers for egg production and eventually slaughter. In the 1970s, pig farmers succumbed to the mass production process and began shifting to factory farmers. Soon after, cow farmers followed. Today, roughly 94% of all animals farmed for human consumption, are raised on factory farms.
So, as for the conditions for the animals in these farms, their treatment is inhumane for more reasons than I've even listed here. But overall, everything they do is for the sole purpose of efficiency and maximizing output. So, first of all, they have drastically reduced lifespans. They're kept alive for really the minimum amount of time possible. They're held in extremely close quarters, and this allows for the spread of disease. And in order to prevent them from fighting each other because they will get restless and aggressive, they will debeak the chickens and remove the tails and the horns of pigs and cows. And this is often done without anesthetic, um, and it'll cause pain throughout their lives. So this is what is shown over here. Um, there is forced breeding, so some animals will be chosen as just breeders for life. And in the case of cows, a lot of cows will be kept in perpetual pregnancy so that they will constantly produce milk. And then pigs chosen to breed will be kept in these cages for the entirety of their lives where they don't have space to move around or even turn around. There is genetic manipulation to make sure that the animals produce the most amount of meat or the most amount of milk that they possibly can. And because of this, the animals will not really be able to sustain the amount of energy that they need, and this will cause suffering throughout their lives too. And in order to make them eat as much as possible, they will keep the lights on constantly and prevent them from sleeping just so they eat all day. And another thing with selective breeding is that they will breed all these animals for specific traits, and they will all have those certain traits. And so they are decreasing genetic diversity, and that makes those populations a lot more vulnerable to disease or anything else wiping them out. So, what are the environmental and health impacts of factory farming? One of the biggest things is just the copious amounts of waste that these animals produce. The waste just has to be contained in things called manure lagoons. And the problem with these lagoons is that the manure will emit gases like methane and nitrous oxide, and that can be pretty toxic to anyone just in the vicinity breathing it in. It can also contaminate the soil and water by just seeping in. And another thing it can do is enter the atmosphere and contribute to our greenhouse gases. It's difficult to measure exactly how much of our greenhouse gases are caused by manure, but here we have an estimate by the US in 2014 estimating at about 8%. We have another estimate for just animal agriculture as a whole, contributing 18% of global greenhouse gas emission. And just in the small radius around these farms, it has been measured that they have, on average, lower air, soil, and water quality. And fertilizers tend to have the same impact because you need so much fertilizer to support these farms and support their animal populations. It can also cause soil and water contamination with the excess nutrients it has. So, as for human health, animal waste has also caused outbreaks in the past, the following pathogens. Also, there is bacterial contamination of the meat that's possible, especially with the animals living in such close quarters. That's why Salmonella and E. coli are pretty common. Another thing is to prevent disease in these animals, they will treat them with antibiotics, but with excessive antibiotic use, you start to develop bacterial resistance to those antibiotics. So it's being observed that just as a population, our antibiotics are just not as effective anymore to the bacteria that we know. And then the last thing is that the hormones that are used to make these animals produce more milk or produce more meat has been linked to cancer and reproductive abnormalities in humans after consuming them. So we do have a pretty big agricultural belt in California, and that does include factory farms. So San Joaquin Valley is a pretty big one. Specifically, it is known for cattle, among other things, and it has been recorded to have among the nation's worst water and air quality and highest asthma rates. Apart from that, specific factory farms, we've had spills and contaminations, specifically one in Chino Basin. Has been known to have runoff into the Santa Ana River, which is sometimes pulled from for Orange County's drinking water. Another big thing is the annual dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, which is caused by runoff from water inland that picks up so many nutrients from the excessive amounts of fertilizer that we use that it becomes, it eventually makes it so wildlife cannot be sustained in that area of the Gulf of Mexico, and it creates these dead zones where no fish can live. And then a lot of these consequences are felt on more local levels, and this makes it so minorities and low-income populations that are usually situated around these farms are disproportionately affected by the environmental consequences.
So, who are the stakeholders in the topic? The local and federal government, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Inspector General, advocacy organizations, lobbyists, state representatives, and consumers. The majority of factory farms are underpaid, but for those unable to get another job, this is an appealing option. The low pay allows leniency to the cruel actions practiced. The executives of factory farms receive the money gained by farming, and because they are able to pay workers low wages, this allows executives to pay lobbyists, to lobby representatives to get their bills passed that they need. Small farmers can also hire lobbyists, but the money is needed in order to push the bill through. According to the Organic Consumers Association, corporate farms have spent over $1 billion within 5 years in lobbying and campaign finances for lobbying. So what role does the US Department of Agriculture play? The USDA is responsible for putting regulations and protections into place. Their duties include helping farmers with price determination and the well-being of animals in order to protect the public. Within recent news, stipulation has come on the issue that the USDA secretly appoints factory farm executives to the Organic Standards Board. As a consumer to factory farming, you are the most important stakeholder to factory farming. This year, the American Humane Society conducted a survey with 5,900 recipients on the issue slash no issues of factory farming. 95% stated that they were concerned with the welfare of animals, and 75% said that they would be willing to pay more for humanly raised meat. The biggest problem that people had with buying humanly raised meat was simply that the products were not available. So, what can I do to help? We can start by buying less. Less demand for meat and dairy means less suffering for animals. Choose wisely. Buy higher welfare when you can. It's better for animals, for yourself, and for the planet. Ask questions. If you're not sure where the meat at a restaurant or supermarket came from, make sure to ask questions. And lastly, be vocal. Spread the word about higher welfare among your family and friends. You can also reach out to representatives in your area.
So for our questions, first one is, which of the following does not occur as a result of holding livestock in extremely close quarters? And the answer is lower output per unit area. And then the second one is, which of the following is not a reason for the emergence of factory farming? And the answer is improving the quality of animal produce. And here are references. Thank you for listening.